Hello and welcome. Wonderful to have you here. So this is going to be a quick message looking into kind of the current collective timeline and how we can shift to the higher timeline. So receive what resonates, release what does not. This is just going to be kind of a real quick message. Some of you may resonate, some may not. So starting out, current timeline, we have the storm. Okay. The storm comes in and creates a lot of change. The storm comes in, the storm is nature, right? The storm is Mother Nature. It's not necessarily something that we can control. Sometimes we can call in the storm, right? But that also means that there are changes happening for us as well. This is something that is natural. This is something that is the energy of like clearing out old paradigms. Okay, but it feels rocky, it feels stressful, it feels like there's a lot shifting and changing, and that can mess with our sense of security. It can mess with our sense of, feeling safe at this time. So remember to come back to yourself, come back to your personal power, awareness, and grounded energy. With this storm energy as well, it is a clearing energy, but it also reminds me of, the collective shadow. So doing your shadow work and sitting with that is also something that is important here to add to the collective light rather than the collective shadow consciousness, right? Which the shadow consciousness is kind of the unknown. It's when people go about their lives living in a way that is almost like from a place of wounding or patterns that don't necessarily represent who they are, right? It's not a sovereign way of living. So it's just bringing the awareness into that. The storm is also about observing humanity, what's shifting, what's changing. It's kind of creating the storm. There's a lot of observing happening at this time. The next message that we have is the underworld, right? And in this card, it's what's going on you could see it as the underworld, right? The lower dimensions. But this is also about the earth energy. This is about, the worlds that are beneath us in the respect of, insects, what's going on within the earth. A lot of shifts and changes happening here. The messages that you receive from insects might be quite powerful at this time, so look into those if you feel called to. And the next message that we have here is the temple. Okay, so there is this protection, this healing, there is calling in the higher frequencies, aligning with the higher timeline, channeling in energy, understanding energy, shifting our consciousness, shifting our awareness here, okay, away from fear, because the underworld can also be the energy of fears, facing our fears, and to this energy of growth, to this energy of connecting in with that divine spark within us here, seeing ourselves, as that divine temple, taking the best care of ourselves, nurturing ourselves. If you find at this time you're moving through lower frequencies, the best thing that you can do is ground yourself, connect within, and give yourself what you need in that moment. Nurture yourself. Sometimes it's as simple as having a really good cry. Sometimes it's connecting with a loved one to hold space for you. Sometimes it's having getting a glass of water and just taking some time to recharge, reflect. Sometimes it's creating a healthy snack, but pulling that awareness back to yourself is going to be so helpful in navigating and shifting from the lower timelines to the higher or your highest timeline. And your highest timeline exists within your heart, okay? It's something that you consciously create. And it's something that is, what I'm shown is, it has many different interpretations based on who you are and what you desire, right? But the higher timeline is the higher frequency, okay? So the storm in the underworld right now could be the 3D and the lower frequencies. So you might observe that you are seeing these different timelines. And I know personally it can get quite, it can be unnerving. It can absolutely be unnerving to see these different timelines or, distortion or more of like the shadow consciousness. But keep in mind that you're observing that. You don't have to align with that. Okay, that's something that's really important. And what is really helpful here is nature and grounding. And for those of you you know, connecting with source energy and how you best connect with source energy is also important here for your growth. And oftentimes, you know, storms and clearing energy creates room for more new beginnings and more growth to happen here, you know, in your life. So I think that connecting with nature is also going to be very powerful for helping you shift through, for those of you who are feeling like you're either on a lower timeline right now or you're observing lower timelines and you're concerned that's the direction in which this world is going. Come back to yourself, come back to grounding yourself, come back to your personal power. And when you do that, you take that awareness that is maybe going in the direction you don't want it to, you pull it back to yourself, and then you're able to channel your personal conscious power to build and create the world that you want to create, and to align with the timeline and know the difference from when you're in alignment or when you're out of alignment, okay? But this is that deep connection within self, within, you know, the divinity that is within you. Source is within you, right? That spark is within you. The other message that I'm getting here is to be inspired by the storm. We have the poet. And you see how much transmutation is happening here? And we still have that shadow energy, right? We still have light and shadow. We have it within us. We see it within the world. But there's a transmutation that's happening here. And the shadow energy can even feel very dense to you in particular right now. And so being inspired to create, being inspired to share your voice right now is really powerful and transformative. If you hold so much in, eventually, you know, it manifests in ways that can be painful or stressful, right? Or just overwhelming in general. And with this poet energy, and we do have, it looks like this person has their hand on almost like the moon, right? So whatever element that you connect in with that best supports you, that you're called to at this time, okay? It's important that you do that, and that you listen to your inner being, that you listen to your intuition, and you create. Like, we know oftentimes how humanity in general, when going through changes or going through challenges, you know, are inspired to create. So also, you know, if you have that voice within you that wants to create, you have that poet voice, then definitely, you know, dive into that and create. That's going to help transmute the energy that's within you that might feel stagnant, stuck, dense, heavy, or maybe holding you back from aligning with a higher timeline. So that's something that's powerful here. Also, to be inspired by others is something else that's coming through. Maybe other people's creative works, whether it's music or poetry or artwork, whatever that creation is here. That might be something else that inspires you to write or to kind of activate that spark within you to create. So that's something else that's coming through that's going to help you shift and align with a higher timeline. Again, keep in mind, like, self-care right now is divine. So self-care is so important. Okay, and like I said, if you find yourself in a low frequency, or even if someone around you is in a low frequency, encourage them to nurture themselves. Okay, and like I said, it can be the simplest things, the simplest things. But unless we go within, if we're always seeking without, we're giving away our power. There's infinite answers, right? But if we go within, we discover our truth. We discover what unconditional love truly is, okay? Oftentimes we have been taught to give to others, to do things, you know, to help others. Everything has been outward, right? That's very masculine energy, where now it's the time of the feminine to really go within and know your truth, and start there to learn what unconditional love is for you, and what that feels like for you, because then you can tell when there isn't, you know, unconditional love that's being offered. And you won't put yourself in positions where, you know, you could have a bit of a blind spot to somebody who, you know, doesn't have the best intentions for you, right? So it all starts within you first and foremost. And that's like the big pressing message coming through here, okay? And the other message we have is the ocean. And that is the exploring your intuitive gifts, your intuitive currents, understanding energy. The ocean, this can also be, many different types of beings that are all over this world, right, at this time. Some of you, it might be helpful to connect, to listen to, like ocean sounds, or if you live by the ocean, connecting with the ocean might be helpful right now. Listening to whales or dolphins, that might be something that assists you with clearing energy, with transmuting energy, with returning back to your, your center, your balance, your harmony, your peace. Okay, maybe even being on the water, if you have a boat, or, you feel you're somebody who loves the water, that might be something else here that assists you with moving through and shifting. And understand that, if you're observing lower timelines within people or within your own life, like you just feel like you're kind of floating through these timelines, you're observing and learning from each of them, and you're knowing, okay, well, I don't want to align with that timeline, so how can I make a conscious choice? How can I make a difference here? What kind of world or timeline do you want to align with and create and build? Okay, so that's something else. There's something to be said about having that foot grounded, right? That 1 foot grounded in like the current reality of what's going on, but also stretching and aligning and putting your focus and attention into what you want to create and build rather than just what is. That's not to deny what is happening right now in the world or to ignore it, but it's to learn from it, observe it, and then be able to create something better. Okay, and that's the Empress energy. The Empress energy is her roots go deep into the underworld. Her roots go deep into the earth, right? The root work is the shadow work, our ancestral clearing, being, learning how to practice grounding, connecting with our ancestors. And then you have those deep roots, and then you have the trunk, which is the human, right? And then you have the branches that extend into the higher frequencies, into the higher timeline, into the higher dimensions. So there's this beautiful balance that's created, right? And you continue, your consciousness and your awareness as you do the work continues to shift up higher and higher into the higher frequencies, into the higher timelines, yet you're still grounded, right? You still have a grounded presence. So if that's confusing by any means, definitely share it. But your questions here, but really, we're understanding more about ourselves and where we want to be, right? Where we want to be. And the next message we have is the Siren. Okay, and that's underneath the temple. So for me, it's like, where are we called to be? Are you called to be at a certain, are you called to explore a certain intuitive gift or ability right now? Okay, are you called to a certain place, that maybe is sacred to you? Are you called to go within? Because the Siren energy is the feminine energy. Okay, and when you do this work and you're grounded, you're not going to be misled, because you know your truth, you know your internal compass, and you trust, and you built that trust within yourself here. Okay, and you take the best care of yourself, and you know what unconditional love is, and you know what unconditional love isn't. You understand a lot more about who you are, and you have this sense of relief in knowing that you can create your reality, and knowing that you can create a world and align with a timeline that you would love to see, okay? That you would love to live in, that you would love to see your loved ones live in, right? So right now, from your inner being or source, where are you called to be? What are you called to focus on? And when you see people or you observe lower timeline energy, the shadow consciousness, make sure that you don't get lost in that. Make sure that you understand that that's not your timeline, okay? The lower timelines are going to be for those living deep in a deeply unconscious way, okay? And still learning lessons or refusing to learn lessons, okay? There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack, more than I care to go into right now at this time. But just make sure that you don't get lost in someone else's timeline. Make sure that you choose the timeline and to create consciously the timeline that is calling to you. What feels like heaven on earth to you? You know, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Because that's within the heart. And maybe it is just a feeling, or maybe you instantly have a vision of a certain place. Maybe there's a certain career, there's something that you can align with. But the way that you align with these higher timelines is to be very conscious of the decisions that you're making. You know, having that awareness of self and what is in alignment and what is out of alignment for you. And having that deep compassion that you're learning. Everyone is learning, okay? And that, you know, it's not about judging. It's about what resonates, what feels best for you, what is your timeline, what feels like home for you, right? And for so many of you, it's that source energy. And that source energy is within many places, right? Many spaces, many people. So try not to get attached to like a specific person, and understand that it's an energy. And for many of you too, you're just going to walk your path. You're going to walk your aligned path. And those energies, those vibrational matches are going to show up in your world. It's almost like they're aligned at the right time to meet with you. Of course, always use your discernment here. But I just felt called to bring forth this message for those of you that are really feeling like you're stuck in a low frequency, or maybe, you know, where you work is very low vibrational at this time. But, you know, there's all these different methods and ways to raise your vibration. But right now it might be like the simplest solutions are the best. And to embrace those and to be inspired where you're at right now. And come back to your center, come back to your, you know, your divine light within you. Because I feel like that creates that, almost like that spiritual protection around yourself as well. And it helps you focus on what's most important to you rather than be distracted by events or other things that are going on that are taking away from, taking your attention away from what you feel is important for you to focus on. And I can't tell you what that is, because it's up to you on your journey to decide what that is. For many of you, like I said, this is going to be different for so many of you, and that's why it's so important you go within and you do that work and you build that trust within your inner being, so that you're making choices that are in alignment for your highest good, for your highest timeline, which would ultimately be for the collective good and the collective, right, timeline. Imagine if everybody was living on their highest timeline right now, that they were consciously creating, which means that they wouldn't be creating from a space of shadow or wounding. Imagine what that would be like. It would be absolutely incredible. It would be absolutely incredible. So, give yourself a lot of compassion. Give yourself some space, okay? And remember to observe, not absorb. And take the best care of yourself. Receive the messages that resonate for you on your journey right now. Release anything that does not. Thank you so much. Take the best care, and I will see you soon.